Nikki Haley falls like a comet. Haley's Comet. Braver than the rest, coming at you live from beautiful, not so sunny Bristol, Tennessee. It is raining cats and dogs here today. Tomorrow's supposed to be beautiful, but we are not weathermen. So we're just going to move on into the topics of the night. First of all, let's just get it on the table. The results of the election. Nobody was shocked. Nobody.
Sorry, our Rumble broadcast just went down.
Oh,
I just got a notification.
We got to get that back up.
I don't know. That's that's on Rumble, I think. I'll work on that, but
so yeah, nobody was shocked.
With Trump,
It's like it's silly at this point.
oh, it's ridiculous.
And I love the media is just falling apart about this, right? They just can't even deal. It's
They can't handle it. And, it still raises the question about why Nikki Haley stayed in as long as she did. I kind of get it. So part of me thinks, okay, she had just a truck full of money, and why not? Maybe something will happen. But the polling has been so consistent throughout this entire process, and it's been so close to how the primaries. When you look at Iowa and you look at New Hampshire and all those things, the polling was very much aligned with the results. And
yeah,
so
it was very similar.
At that point, you're like, okay, this is not much is going to change,
Right.
And
Do you think she thought she was going to throw a surprise like Trump did? Because I mean, I remember in 16 the polls were, like he would come out and win, but not poll so great.
right. I think that she thought something was going to happen with the Supreme Court. I think that was one of the things she was waiting on, seeing what was going to come out of some of these lawsuits.
Right, because if he couldn't run, then she's it.
Yeah. So if he gets bumped out, she's the one, to do it. And she's kind of, I guess, positioned herself, even though I don't know what the procedure would be if something else were to happen to him.
As a number two.
Right. If something else were to happen to him, as many people out there, nefarious people out there would desire. I don't know if that means she steps into the position or if that just
that's fascinating. Has there ever been in history any time where a candidate would maybe die or like of natural causes, where they had to pick somebody that wasn't their main? I don't think that's
not leading up to it that I'm aware of. I don't think that's ever happened. But nonetheless, she probably had a lot of things planned in her mind. But I think that it was all about getting attention. It was all about drawing more attention to the things that she's passionate about, which would be obviously conflicts overseas. That's her big thing.
Number one.
That's her big thing, and that's what you get when you make a few $100,000 a year for Boeing, and you get several $1 million a year from those folks. They expect you to pitch the thing that's going to help their bottom line.
Right.
And she did her due diligence, and she'll get a board.
She did a good job of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, she'll get a board position for Lockheed or Raytheon or somebody like that.
Sure.
Yeah. And so yeah, she served her purpose, but I think that at the end of the day,
wouldn't it be something if we see her on BlackRock's list of people?
Yeah. I think she got BlackRock money. I'm almost certain that I read that, or I might have even said that in one of the podcasts. But BlackRock has their hands. It's really wild. BlackRock, and there's Blackstone. Blackstone is a smaller organization, but when you look at their donation patterns, all these people are playing ponies on both sides. They got their money spread across the field, and some of these people are getting hundreds of thousands. Some of them are getting millions. Some of them are getting, the bare minimum. They'll get $5,000, which is a drop in the bucket.
Right.
It's nothing when you're talking about a presidential.
They're still getting something. But then you have like the whole thing with, was it Vivek, right? Who had the Soros Foundation help him
when he was in college. Yeah.
Right. And you sit back and go, did they know something even back then that they can, because to me, especially in this climate, if you can attach your name to somebody, even as insignificant as $5,000 might be, right?
Yeah.
You own them.
That's 100%. He tried to back his way out of the Soros thing. It was a scholarship, I believe, when he was going to law school. I think that's where he got the scholarship.
Okay.
So it ties him to George Soros, who I'll tell you about in a second. I was looking at donations. It was unbelievable. There's a lady online who was telling you, or basically informing people about ghost donors. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. So I started downloading. This is what I did over the weekend. I downloaded Excel documents from fec.gov. Bro. Sorry, that got me on a tangent.
It's all right, because this is like,
that's where I saw George Soros, obviously. You can see how much money George Soros had donated, which was like $120 million. It was something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you go down the aisle and you can see all these big donors. But what you do is you can do a search from 1 penny to $1. And then you can start sorting that. And you can export it for an entire election year. And I looked at 21-22, election year 2021 to 2022. And there are people in there who have made, one lady, she's a little old lady who is retired, lives in Florida. She has donated to, I was looking specifically at Republicans. She had donated $257,000 to Kevin McCarthy. I'm like, okay, hold up. One retired person sitting down here, and it was all in $1 donations. So there is certain ways that it's tracked and reported. So the same person made tens of thousands of $1 donations or thousands of $1 donations. Some of them were like $100, some of them were $37. But in all, he was, prior to speaker, got like $1,000 or $1,500. As speaker, got tens of thousands of dollars, like many tens of thousands. And then post speaker, nothing. Like it dried up. And so it's a way of embezzling money, basically, into campaigns. And it works on both sides of the aisle. It happens on the Republican side and happens on the Democrat side.
Sure.
But they're called ghost donors. And it is highly illegal, but you can go straight to fec.gov and search for it. I looked at Act Blue and Win Red. Those were the two. So Act Blue is the platform that people during their campaigns can collect donations. And they handle all of it for a nominal fee, of course. And Win Red is much the same. So it was a platform for Republicans.
Right.
Embezzling campaign money.
How does that go? How does... Well,
so you can write off. I mean, you see these people with lavish expenses. Well, I mean, look at Fannie Willis, right? Or Fannie Willis.
Fannie, yeah.
Fannie. Yeah. I hear people say it both ways. I'm like, I don't know, whatever.
Well, I think Fannie's
She's a criminal.
I think it's more appropriate to call her Fannie. So
she's a crook. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
But Fannie Willis was taking all these elaborate vacations, and she openly admitted that, hey, I drew money off of my campaign whenever. Now that could have been, playing the devil's advocate, could have been her money that she had put into her campaign and was drawing that money back out. There's ways where it could be.
There's games that they play.
But at the end of the day, these people get rich one way and they live a lavish lifestyle because they're getting hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars pumped into their campaigns. And it's like any other expense. This is campaign related. That's campaign related.
Everything can be campaign. Yeah. I mean, anything and everything.
We had a meeting in the Bahamas.
Right.
And because it was sensitive information we were discussing, we took a private plane.
Right.
And we had to stay in a villa that had plenty of space so we could have a desk that we could use as an office in the
Right.
And it's the gamesmanship. Same thing people do with their taxes in a lot of ways. You're trying to write things off.
Speaking of
other people's money,
which, I'm so glad you even mentioned the word taxes, because I finished mine today. That monkey is off my back.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes. And but I began to think, with all the things that are happening, like you showed me something that I'm going to ask you to pull up.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, where our tax dollars, the stuff that we give our money to the government, and then they do stuff like this with our tax dollars. And it makes you sit back and go, if this kind of stuff continues, I mean, one way for us to stand up is, and I think it's probably a movement that's gonna start small and increase, is to go, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
I'm not paying you.
No.
Because this is $1 million goes to a...
Millions turn to billions. You got to think this is one little kink bar, basically, in Philadelphia, and they're getting $1 million. So you spread that around, and that's a small little establishment that's doing their own kink show, and that's what we're spending tax dollars on. Spread that around the country with hundreds of thousands.
Be clear,
of small
though,
businesses.
because I don't want to paint it with I don't want to paint it with that brush, Jared.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's where my head goes.
It's not about the kink. It's about the renovation of the kink.
Well, that's fine.
Facility.
That's fine. It's who it's going to. Why do we need to pay to renovate a place that does kink shows?
Listen, I don't know if you've ever been strapped down with old leather, but
no,
it is uncomfortable. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Rusty chains don't.
That's a horrifying image, by the way.
So I'm just saying, you find this stuff. So you find this stuff out, and John Fetterman was, who we absolutely love.
I loved him. I loved him when he was one of the best trolls for like 6 weeks, 2 months. He was a great troll.
Of all the people, though, right? To kind of make light of, like, to bring this to light.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
I mean,
now I think if I read this right, I think he was actually mad about this one though. That's what was confusing about it. Did you ever see the video of him walking out? He was walking out of the Capitol. There were some pro-Palestinian protesters getting arrested. They're handcuffed with police. He's walking out the back of the Capitol with his aide or somebody. He's got this little tiny Israel flag. He's wearing his baggy shorts and his hoodie, and he just sits there and waves it. So he's in the background with all these cameras playing, and he's just trolling these pro-Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And and for free speech, sometimes he'll every now and then step out and say something, and I take it kind of as a warning that there's people we can get really amped up about. So we do it with Bill Maher. We do it with Bill Maher all the time now.
Yeah.
We're like, he's coming over to, and then you'll hear him say something that is just so utterly stupid.
He's not coming over.
No, he's not.
But he's got common sense. It's almost like it's a very weird blend, and I don't know how Bill Maher sleeps at night.
Yeah,
it's got to be so hard because he's in the tank for his team.
Yeah,
but yet his team. It's almost like when
he's waiting on in the shallow end and the deep end. Maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good metaphor.
I mean, if you think about like an NBA player who's a star, and they get injured and have to sit on the bench and watch their team lose.
Yeah,
right. He's like Kobe or Michael Jordan or somebody like that. If they were to be injured and have to sit out a season, and they're just on the bench watching their team perform without them, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's what he's got to feel like, is like, oh man, we can do better than this. We can.
I think he does. Let me tell you something that has shocked me about this guy. So first off, his recovery, he still mumbles but this dude had a full-on stroke.
Yes, he did.
And he said some relatively intelligible things. So, we gave him a hard time. Look, I don't like the guy. He's a socialist.
Right.
He is as far left as you can possibly get, and that is antithetical to nearly everything that I believe in.
Then there's stuff like this where, he's as far left as he can get, but then there's this, he spins it back into this place of like, wait a minute, this actually isn't okay.
He's different from his peers because he's not completely devoid of common sense. I think most of his peers are completely devoid of common sense.
I agree with that.
And when we think this tells you how far it's gotten. A guy will occasionally say something that is relatively common sense, and we're like, the guy, he's coming over to be a
he's great.
The socialist is on our side.
Yeah.
What kind of a clown world do we live in right now?
Oh man, it's ridiculous. But
it is. I mean,
so they get $1 million to renovate this, and they're having parties, like a impromptu theater night there, where it's not only clothing is not an option, basically, right?
Well, so they call it, a closer look reveals that Philadelphia's friendliest and longest running kink and fetish party, called the Aviary, is improvisational interactive theater involving consensual kink play. The description discusses the need to quote, get permission from a dungeon monitor to play with fire or puncture the skin. Like, I really don't want to read much more of this.
Yeah, you can't. We're not gonna.
Because it is just, but this, I mean, we can go a lot of ways with this. One, we can go the moral route, but two, we can go the spending route.
Right.
When this is in, again, millions make billions very, very quickly. When you're talking about a government that's spending $1.5 trillion over what we're bringing in tax revenue every year, and this kind of waste is, I'm gonna restate. Sorry, I keep backing up on my points here. I was listening to a commentator today, and I don't recall who it was. Very, very moderate person, but moderate to right is kind of how they said. And they were talking about us needing to come back to the center, and the more central positions are going to be the most popular, and to a certain degree that is true. But the centrist positions are not going to get us to fiscal responsibility. They're not going to get our debt down. They're not going to stop deficit spending and wastefulness. We have to compromise towards the right, and not to the right with when people go nuts when they hear that word sometimes, the far right. I'm saying towards conservatism and towards the Constitution, because the amount of spending that's going to have to go down, you're talking about us spending $6 trillion. We have to cut, 20% of the budget. That's not going to happen if you compromise, because our compromises are now on the left side of the spectrum.
Well, and I guess here's the thing. You look at something like this and you go, okay, this debt that we keep just accruing, right?
Yeah.
That we've got to cut or we're done. I can't even tell you how many times have we mentioned it on this podcast, let alone, that it's just, we keep hearing it over and over. It's a banging drum that our economy is going to fall.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me about it is it's like, I think that gong has sounded so much and it hasn't happened yet, that people are like, yeah, I don't think so, right? It's kind of like the return of Christ.
Yeah.
For 2,000 years, people, no man knows the day or the hour, and we don't want to. 2,000 years, people have been saying that, and it's like, no, these things are going to happen, and they're going to happen soon.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to wake up, and as long as we're taking our money and giving it to these type of things, right? Yeah. Or paying for housing for immigrants.
Yeah.
Like, we are throwing money, our money, my money, your money. Everybody who's listening that pays their taxes every year, they're taking that money and they're throwing it away. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to hand that off to my kids.
Yeah.
And say, you guys have to figure out how to pay for this. They're just pushing it down the road.
Well, and they're saying you're not as important as these non-citizens. The non-citizens that come across our border.
Right.
We are spending tens of thousands of, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Meanwhile, we have veterans on the street that are homeless and hungry. Absolutely. We have families that are struggling, living paycheck to paycheck under rampant inflation, and they just keep pumping money into people that don't belong in this country. And that's the whole, remember, we had the conversation about compassion, how this is a compassionate position. These people are widows and orphans, and that's biblical to take care of widows and orphans.
Absolutely.
And the fact remains, it is not just widows and orphans.
Right.
It is military-age males from countries that are hostile to the United States, and there is video evidence to prove it.
Yep.
And saying anything to the contrary is being completely dishonest and disingenuous.
You can't be. Here's the big issue of it. If you're going to claim it to be compassionate, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do this in the name of compassion. So we're going to go ahead and kick somebody out in the name of compassion so that we can bring somebody in.
Yeah.
In the name of compassion. We're going to go ahead and overburden a city or a town or a group of people in the name of compassion. We're going to make it unsafe for you to live there.
Yeah.
So you might call it compassion to one group, but you're being incredibly evil to another, right?
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. Have you ever listened to Jordan Peterson?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so Jordan Peterson is, aside from being brilliant, he's got this mantra that he's repeated several times over, and it's kind of when he really started, and it was, getting your own house in order before you go on to do other things, right?
Sure.
And so having that's kind of the way we are as a country. We don't have our own house in order, and we have already, we are spending more. We're doing everything wrong. We're dilapidating our own house. Meanwhile, we're worried about calling the city council and getting the people to come over here to work on the neighbor's house, and that they've got a long, grown-up yard,
right?
And their shutters are falling off. It's blight. Look at that. Meanwhile, our house
is falling apart.
Yeah,
right.
It's absolutely falling apart.
There's kind of like that biblical principle there too, when it's don't point out the log in somebody else's eye when you have a speck in your own, right?
Right.
So deal with the speck first.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is as our house. First of all, there's no reason on earth why the government doles out the money that it doles out for things and projects that it is the most insane if you look at the list of things that they give to.
Yeah.
And listen, we've been beneficiaries of it. I mean, people, okay, small business, this, that, ministries. There's certain things that can benefit from it, but then there's things that you go, why are we giving our money to this?
Yeah. Well, private institutions. I mean, when you talk about the arts, the big one that people mentioned was I think the Kennedy Center when COVID first came out, and they were getting $20 or $30 million, something to that tune. And everybody said, why are we paying for the arts? Why are we worried about the Kennedy Center? The Kennedy Center has this huge endowment. And it's just the money grab that is typical when they're not voting on itemized budgets. And it doesn't have to be itemized to a T, but when departments have to justify their budget.
Right.
When we do omnibus spending bills, they lump everything into it. There's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pages. And I told you about the 1,850 pages, or 42, I think, pages, was the first one. And I said, I'm going to read this whole thing. And I could not do it, obviously, because it's 1,800 pages. And I just did a search, 000, 000, 000, and just hit find. And I went through almost the entire thing just to see what they were spending money on. And they're doing this. They're all getting that same size bills, one's bigger than that are more than that first one, which was hundreds of billions of dollars. And they're just voting on it in 24 hours.
That's the thing. That's how they're pushing this all through, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it was in there. You should have read it.
Yeah. So I'll slide it in, and I'll get my pork, but the little guy doesn't. What we have spent in, somebody made a great point the other day. I think it was a stand-up comedian, and they said, based on what we had spent in Ukraine, we could have built, it was something like 20 border walls. We could have given every homeless person in America a house. We could have done all these things that you would think people on the left would want to do. And you would think some people on the right would want to do it. I don't think that's the way we handle the problem personally, but I'm just saying with that dollar amount, they could have done all of these things, and yet they're putting it into a foreign country. Meanwhile, we've got issues here that we're trying to deal with.
But this is kind of coming back to it all, right? That we are becoming more and more like Rome.
Yes.
Where our tentacles reach far, right? We've got, Rome expanded, conquered. We're doing it a little differently, but you better believe we're conquering the Ukraine. If Ukraine comes out of this, they're going to answer to us 6 ways to Sunday. They don't have their independence. We have their independence, right?
Yeah. And
so you look at the way that America has decided to expand and meddle in every like we are global. We sit here, but we've got people all over the globe running governments.
Yeah.
We have puppet regimes everywhere.
And we're really bad at it, by the way.
Well, yeah, of course we are. We've failed at that and continue to do so. But similar to Rome expanded. Similar to Rome, the moral decay of the society. Before Rome happened, they lived under the law. God's law was here.
Yeah.
It was wrong to murder.
Yeah.
It was wrong to, like the commandments were here. And Rome, I believe, started probably under some of that innate human, because it was mankind had these laws written on their heart even, that like, this is something we don't do. And then they got away from it. Mm-hmm. And they started to have all kinds of extracurricular activities.
Well, and financially, an expansive, like you were saying, an expansive empire cost them an absolute fortune.
Right.
And, it leads to economic downturn. It leads to, social degradation when you start talking about the morals. And like you say, the further you get away from God, or if you were, whatever it is, you get into, polytheism and all those things, and you start to lose that moral foundation. And you are 100% right. It is innate in us, and it's been innate in us from the beginning. It's varied on the severity. You could even look here in America, the Wild West, right? And in the Wild West, you'd go out and kill somebody in the street if you wanted to. You know, you could have a duel, or if they picked a fight with you and you killed them, that's self-defense.
Right. What do you call me, a liar?
Right, right. But it was still justifiable to certain degrees, and I don't know if we've advanced or not in necessarily in that way, but we still recognize in most places self-defense. But we see that the evil around us, or when you talk about socialism or communism, they realize that self-defense is innate, and so they remove people's ability to defend themselves, and that helps them subjugate people.
Right.
So they know, even Stalin knew that self-defense is an innate human right. Now, granted, he was an atheist, and so was most Marx. You know, all those people are atheists, but nonetheless, they recognize that we have to remove their ability to defend themselves if we're going to subjugate those people. And so it's innate. It is still innate.
Well, and it started,
I might have done a terrible job explaining that.
We are so much on this track because it started with silencing their voice, right?
Yeah.
And we see that now. I mean, over and over, we see this where, tonight we're talking about stuff, and before the show even started, we got to be careful how we approach this because we don't want to, they're just going to shut you down.
Yeah.
My favorite thing this week, by the way, favorite moment of all time was when Facebook and where it all just crashed.
Oh yeah.
Right. Do you think somebody flipped a switch that said somebody was sending
come on, in the middle of an election right before Super Tuesday?
Somebody was sending them a message like, "Hey, you don't want to mess this up. This time around we're going to fight fair. We're going to shut you down."
Yeah.
I mean, what else could it have been?
What was it called? Not Downtrace. There's a website that you can go to find every network-based entity out there. So whether it's Google, Facebook, Instagram, Charter Communication, or whatever it happens to be, and it will tell you when they go down, all on a scale of like the same time frame. So it's tracking them all. And sure enough, and that's a test bed. In my opinion, it's a test bed for, we'll call it election. I don't want to say the I word, interoperability. Let's go.
Yeah, good.
I can't say the other word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a test bed for it. How can we shut down some communications and stifle things a bit? And what effect does that have, on the trends? Because they're watching. You're watching the hour by hour trends as people are, in some cases, as votes are coming in, It's frightening, man. This year, I'm telling you, it's
going to be unbelievable to watch. I'm glad we live where we live.
Me too.
If you ain't from around here, feel free to stay where you are and not come.
No vacancy.
Right. But it is going to be insanity. And I don't, listen, I don't want to use even remotely, I don't want to use the term civil war because I would like to think that as a nation we would,
So I have a thought on this.
Yeah,
I think a lot
of people do because it's actually becoming more and more of a reality, right?
Yeah.
Where they go, okay, wait a minute. So if Trump wins this election, there's going to be it's going to be mass chaos.
Yeah.
If Biden wins this election, it's going to be mass chaos.
Yeah.
So what do? You've got to think in. You got to first of all center yourself and go, okay, first we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Right. But what's it going to look like?
Well, I mean, first off, valid question, but I don't think people, that's always the trigger. When we think about, Lexington Concord, we think about the shot heard around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Why were the British coming? And this is all the way back to the founding. So why were the British coming to confront those militia members? They were coming to disarm them. They gave an order, go and disarm those people, and those people stood their ground. So that's just a historic story of the American spirit standing its ground against an oppressor. This isn't the same scenario that we're in now.
No.
We are in a much more connected environment. We are in I would say an equally hostile, in my opinion, an equally hostile political environment because you had loyalists and you had federalists and you had people that didn't want to play ball with the king, and some people that say, no, this is the only way that it's going to be done. And they were comfortable inside that level of authoritarianism. And other people that say, this authoritarianism is stifling my business and my personal life and my family, and it's having an impact that we didn't ask for.
Right.
So I don't think that people now, we are softer as a society. I think that getting to that point is... It's a area that some people, let me put it this way. A lot of people talk flippantly about it, and they say 1776 is going to come again. And, one guy who I really like said that. However, I think that they underestimate just how horrific that would be inside of this country. And I don't know. Because of the platforms that we're on, I'm trying to control the way I say it. If our Rumble feed hadn't died, I would have just said everything that I wanted to say. But I think that civil war is an absolute possibility in this country because of how divisive we are and how emotional we are about the things that we're backing. Mm-hmm. The left is we talked about the climate, right? The climate catastrophizing that's going on. Those people are worshiping the creation, not the creator, like we've talked about before. That is a religious movement. People who back socialism and communism, they're not necessarily a religious movement, but they are a mobilized people.
They got a fever for it.
Right.
They're moving. Right. So.
And we have the patriots, but we, the people on the right side of the spectrum, the ones who just want to be left alone, for those folks, and I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but there's nothing more dangerous than a man who simply wants to be left alone.
Yes.
And I don't know who said it.
That's truth.
But that is kind of the sleeping giant in our society. The left is going to go out and burn down buildings and burn down cities and, do all the things that they do. The right stays quietly in their house. They say, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be part of that. Things will calm down. We keep playing the moderate, but it's just like a coiled up snake that you've walked by it 5 times and you step in the wrong spot and it bites you. It's kind of what we're looking at. So I think if it ever happens, it'll happen quick. That's just an opinion though. I'm not.
Well, I think before that, I really do think that before that happens, I think that we'll see an exodus.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I do for a few reasons. Number one is, we're to look for signs in the heavens, and the heavens are giving us some signs, right? We've talked about them, but I also think that we are the last Christian nation.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. And as things start to unravel, I think God is going to go, okay, my hand, I believe that I believe that the restrainer, the church, the Holy Spirit in the church, right, is the restrainer. I believe that the church going through what would happen should it all break loose, right? I mean, the first place they're already calling us Christian nationalists, right? The fact that they're associating those two things together, you sit back and go, okay, wait, I love America, I love ice cream, and I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. Am I a nationalist? No. In fact, I think any Christian that identifies as a Christian nationalist isn't probably really a Christian. Their priorities are way out of line.
Yeah.
You just need to be a Christian.
Yeah, that's another level of authoritarianism.
Right.
Because you can't have forced conversion, right? That's essentially Christian nationalism says that we're going to set up a theocracy, more or less, inside of America. And America doesn't work that way.
No.
Yeah, it's completely antithetical to our Constitution.
And there's also just we serve Christ, not the government,
and
not America. Right?
Yeah.
It's about Jesus and making Jesus known. And when we start to go, I care more about my rights and more about my freedom of speech and more about my right to bear arms and more about abortion and more about than we do about Christ, then we've got things a little bit out of line.
Yeah.
Now, we've got to speak truth in love to all of it. And I think that's where the church has done a horrific job of acting Christ-like in that you saw Jesus flip tables over once with the money changers, right?
Yeah.
And people use that as a let's get violent.
Right.
Right? Let's go out and get them. But how many times when Jesus was dealing with adversity, did he answer them not a word? Or did he ask them a question in response to their question. How many times did he take the time to actually cause and make them pause and go, or to stop and make them pause and go, never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
And I know it made their blood boil. And I guess that's why I say in this day and age, I don't know how much more time there's going to be where there'll be a platform for that. I think it's
the platform for you're talking about for free and open worship,
free and open speech, free and open worship.
Well, and that's why, like in my opinion, you want to see. You're right, because your priority has to be God. It has to be the word of Christ. Like that's what you're trying to spread. But at the same time, if you are doing that right now, we have the ability and the opportunity to reach more people than we've ever had an opportunity to reach before. But if we keep going down the road we're going down,
right,
we lose that. And not that mankind is going to stop God's ability to spread the word, but our ability to reach more people is drastically affected. And we know that we're going to suffer, right? As Christians, it's in was it in Peter? I was just reading it the other day, actually.
Well, Jesus says in this world you're going to have trouble.
Right.
So we know we're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is this idea that just the terminology even that they're using when I'm a Christ follower first and an American second.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that there's many in the church that are American first and Christ followers. Christ, yeah. They call themselves Christ followers second.
I don't mean to laugh. I just thought of a joke though.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about the guy who went to church and he went up to the pastor after the sermon? And he said, "You know what? I'm not coming back to this church ever again." And he said, "Well, why in the world are you not coming back to this church?" He said, "Y'all play the same music every time I'm here. All I ever hear is Silent Night and Up from the Grave He Arose."
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And that makes me think about.
But that's right? It, right?
Yeah,
that's the Christian base they're talking about.
You're right.
Is not people who actually are following Christ, but people who call themselves Christian, who go to a church sometimes. The true Bible believer, I don't think falls into that camp. For the simple fact that I would lay my weapons down if it meant that I could bring you to Christ and sacrifice myself.
Sure.
I'd willingly do it, right? I would like to think so. Now, I don't know about my kids. I would have a hard time, if it came to anything like that. But I guess that's the point is like when the more and more this stuff ramps up, the more and more you have to start thinking like, am I reflecting Christ in what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because especially on the internet, especially here, especially what we're doing, like
I have a tendency to get. Well, you've heard me a bajillion times. I have a tendency to get amped up about it,
and rightfully so, because it breaks your heart that we're giving money. My tax dollars went to prop up a perverse
thing,
right?
Yeah,
I didn't authorize that, or. If you're in a teacher's union, your tax dollars and your union dues that you're required to pay go to fund a candidate you don't agree with.
Yeah.
So should you be required to pay them? Should I be required to pay taxes when they're doing things that are blatantly against what I believe in with my money?
Yeah.
And as a group, I mean, we have the biggest block in the country of people, the evangelical,
Yeah.
Like, if everybody just said no,
yeah,
it would sink the ship.
It would, but we're so divided even then because a lot of the messaging. This is what I tend to get amped up about is the messaging on one side of the aisle sounds super nice.
It does.
It sounds like when they replace the word equality with equity, seems innocuous, right? It's like it's just such a minor little thing. It's equity. And they're talking about equal outcomes as opposed to equal opportunity. And equal outcomes means that someone has to lose for someone else to win. And that is, our lives are dictated from, start to finish, provided we're following Christ, with how we succeed, how we fail, how we do all of those things. He's supposed to be guiding us if we're looking at him. Some people are going to have a harder time than others. That's just a fact of life. Some people are going to be lifted up by the people that the ones over here would say are oppressing them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's a social division. It's I believe, antithetical to Christianity to say that, no, we need to make sure to push these people back so that this person can come forward, because of the argument I was making in the video I was doing a while back was free will. Free will is from the fall, we have had free will and we can choose to or not to follow God. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, and the way I rationalize this is that free will it works well with our Constitution, because we get. Does that make sense?
You get
free will is part of human nature. God gives us the opportunity.
I chose to do this, so this is right. My free will, right, enabled me.
Yes, and because of the goodness of Christ, and because we couldn't live up to the things that we were supposed to live up to, we take that example and we go forth and do good things as part of our free will. He doesn't make us do it. He doesn't make us love Him. He doesn't make us worship Him. We have the choice, and in America, it has been the same way. You had a choice. Now you have the perception of choice, but it's not. It's not a choice.
It's a perception.
Yep.
That's right. It's like Brother Briscoe, who sits in with us, calls it. It's not all the way down to the selection, not election. Right. I mean, we don't. The choices that we think we're making. Yeah. We're not making. I tell you, a choice until they decide to seize your bank account. Is to not write them the check.
Right.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
And, obviously this is something you don't want to be spouting out too much on social media and everything. But I mean, the truth of it is, so often we talk about, the boycotts and this, let your wallet do the talking, right?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the government, when you lose the right to vote people in and out, mm-hmm. which when it's made for you, the choice is made for you, or when these people sound good, but they're exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At some point, you've got to go, okay, we got to figure this out. I can't vote these people in. We've got to make a change. So what do you do? I mean, where do you go from here? What do you do?
Well, so the system itself, right? The establishment system, when you talk about our politics, they're giving us, it's just like Dr. Briscoe was saying, it is selections, not elections, and they're giving us the option. We're starting to see more people come out of the woodwork that are outside of that mainstream, and those are the ones, when you look at the $460 billion government funding bill,
right?
There was 85 people who voted against it. Most of those were, people that were not in cahoots with the establishment.
Right.
And it's very hard. The Washington, D.C. is a perfect place for someone to go and get power, influence, money, all those things. And when the coffers start filling up with all those campaign donations, a few favors here and there turns into voting for something that is absolutely abysmal and full of pork. But it takes brave people who can weather that firestorm to go up against a Lindsey Graham, or to go up against a Mitch McConnell, or to go up against, pick a
the
Dan
establishment.
Crenshaw, right? These people who, and there's some who are wolves in sheep's clothing. There are some who are true hardliners, and they're true conservatives. That, unfortunately and fortunately, is on us as the voters to decipher. And we have to look deeper. We look at the surface. We look at what Fox News tells us. Mm-hmm. We look at what MSNBC tells us, which mm-hmm. is a terrible idea across the board, or CNN or whoever. And we don't do any of our own research.
Right.
And I understand part of that, because we got lives. We've got a life to live.
Yeah, I don't have time for reading an 1,800-page,
No. Right. And so you rely on, I still believe, more than one. Nobody should ever come to just us to get their information. They should come to us to get our perspective, and then go to someone else as well. You got to look at it from multiple angles. And we can't, a lot of people love to complain about it. I do it, but that's because we do political commentary.
Sure.
I think about Lindsey Graham, right? And I'll complain up one way and down the other about Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham ain't my senator. Marsha Blackburn is my senator.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You have the power that you have in your neck of the woods, right? From your city, state, legislature. You control what you can control.
Yeah.
And let them control what they can control.
Yeah.
I guess the thing about it is, though, is when you look at, and we say this, but now, especially when it comes to the Electoral College, et cetera, like these things, you sit back and go, okay, the entire state of Virginia was red.
Oh, all of it. I'll find a map of that to show that to folks.
The entire state, except for one area, not even one area, one city, right? Basically, one little county. When you consider that kind of thing, you go, okay, it makes it very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Makes it very difficult. And those are the same people who are voting for your senators. Those are the same people that have the same vote that you have. They have the same voice that you have to go out and vote for it. So you literally can make a difference in your pocket, right, in your city. And I think what you might end up seeing more and more of is cities and counties becoming more independent from,
yes.
and we're already starting to see, where is that city in Florida that, I got to remember what I heard on this report of a city in Florida that was going to allow things that even Florida was like no to. Like they're
wow, yeah, I don't know. Like I didn't hear about that one.
You know what? We're our own municipality. We're going to do whatever we want.
Well, people underestimate the power of a local government. I mean, they have leeway that the state and federal governments absolutely do not. So your locality is incredibly important. And we have to look at where a lot of these illegal immigrants are going, because we know that they are meant to kind of juice the voting base, and they're going to go to strategic locations and turn the red areas purple and the purple areas blue.
Yeah, you just pulled up a couple purple spots in Virginia there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I guess you got to go local and think global. At that point, it's all you really can do. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the map of Virginia, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sea of red, and the Southwest Virginia folks are the ones that are, when they talk about I got really vocal when I lived in Virginia. I got really vocal about the Second Amendment legislation, and I was doing it all on social media, and I was writing people, and I was doing all kinds of things to do my part, whatever I could do, and it wound up being, I think, okay for that particular legislation, but Virginia is a place that is ultimately influenced, or not ultimately, but is influenced heavily, obviously, by D.C. Northern Virginia is chock full. You can see this, this area up here at the top. Oh, you can't see my mouse, I don't think, on the screen. But either way, this purple area up here at the top in Nova, as everybody likes to call it, it is deep, deep, deep blue. And they look at the people in Southwest Virginia like a bunch of rubes, like a bunch of idiots. And it's unfortunate, but that's how, in fact, I talked to some D.C. types. I was having lunch with them, and they said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from," I told them the city I was from. I was like, "I'm over down in Bristol." And they said, "Oh, you're one of those QAnon folks, aren't you?" And I had no idea what QAnon was. I'd never heard of QAnon.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What in the world is that?" I probably shouldn't have said that on here, because now it's
yeah, QAnon, you're flagged.
We're flagged. That's it. And the live stream's going down.
Yeah.
But I was like, I have no idea what that is. And he went into this rant about how stupid people in Southwest Virginia were, how, moronic and the crazy things that they believe. And, and I won't go item by item on the list, but what we have now found out of all those crazy things that those rubes down in Southwest Virginia believed? Mm-hmm. They've all happened.
They're right.
They were right.
Right. They were right. I tell you one thing, though, about especially
not about QAnon, but I'm just saying some of the other stuff.
I'll tell you one thing about Virginians, though, that I've lived a lot of years now.
Oh,
I've been all over the country, and I live here right across the street from Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't know who is teaching these people how to drive, but
well, you say that because you're old now.
They are quite possibly the worst drivers I have ever encountered in my life.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I can't. So if you're listening from Virginia and you're driving, please don't.
Take it.
You
can start amping up the Uber service.
Take an Uber. Yeah. So, but yeah, it is funny how all of that stuff that it's truth.
Yeah.
That has come out.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way down to the virus, right? You can still say virus and not get shut down, I think.
Right.
But
who knows?
this past week, Canadian government came out with, they had scientists collaborating with the Chinese on creating bioweapons.
Yeah, it was Pierre Polyev. I forget how to pronounce his name. Pierre Polyev, I believe. It's the conservative opposition.
You did better than I did.
Yeah.
But Trudeau knew about it. They tried to hide it, and you sit back and go, everybody is in cahoots. It's insane how upside down things are.
Yeah.
And Trump being there's no doubt that he's going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
Right? There's no doubt that Biden, should he last that long, is going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
Unless there's a super big surprise, right?
You never know.
But so we've got two men in their 80s who are slated.
One of them doesn't act it.
One of them doesn't act it.
You got to admit.
The other one is like, let me smell your hair. But,
that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. But you've got two men in their 80s who are going to have to deal with the results of their winning.
Sorry, I'm still laughing
about smelling your hair. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
So whoever it is that gets voted in is going to have to deal with the fallout of their nobody's going to be happy. I mean, it is probably one of the most confusing times I've ever. You couldn't write this.
No, and I think that's on the conservative side. I don't want to say dynasties or whatever, but we need to have a lineup of qualified candidates, coming in the future. And there's several of them. I mean, a lot of people talked about, from Trump, you go to Don Jr. Don Jr. is he's better, I'll be honest, a better communicator than his dad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You've got Eric. He's a very solid communicator.
Very solid. Yeah.
But people will probably be turned off by staying in that same family. There'd have to obviously be a break in it.
Who would be the Jeb Bush of the Trump dynasty?
Oh gosh, what? No, please no Jeb Bush symbols.
Okay.
No facsimiles or whatever of Jeb Bush.
But
I, like I say, you've got Matt Gaetz. You've got, we talked about this guy beforehand. I don't know how he would.
Oh,
I love this guy.
Yeah, he is solid. If you guys have not listened to any of his speeches, you've got to listen to this guy.
But my take was, we've got to have a lineup. It could start with the VP, but the VP's not always in the strongest position.
Sure.
And if it's going to be a contentious 4 years, which it will be because of who, as it looks now, who's going to get elected.
Either way you go.
Yep. And so it's going to be super contentious. But if he's able to get in and really rip apart some of that system, we can't just say that Donald Trump is going to come in and fix everything, because he's not. It's impossible to fix our problems in 4 years.
It's going to take years.
Yeah, and this is part of what we were talking about earlier, in my opinion, the compromising towards the right, which is, you want to spend, $1 million on some dirty bar in Philadelphia. Show me where you're cutting $3 million from your budget. You want this, and that's the type of thing that's going to have to happen. You can spend it; it's got to be super important, but we still have to cut the budget. So either nobody gets it, or you give it to this new person, because we're not going to stop all the special interest money. Fine, you want to give them $2 million? Show me where you're cutting $6 million from your budget, and down the line. And that's going to make a lot of people angry. It's going to make the president in the crosshairs of every special interest group, every lobbyist who currently run DC.
You wonder if he'd even last long.
Well, one term, just like they do. I mean, on the other side, they do damage.
Would he even make it through the term without somebody? I mean, you make enough special interests angry. You're not. Well, you're talking billions.
Yeah.
So
our two options are that or complete economic collapse. I've listened to bukus of economists, and they're like, unless we stop spending like we're spending, there's no other solution except for
we're buying our own debt at this point. Nobody else wants it.
Oh, it's right? Ponzi scheme. So it's just a complete Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. I mean, how long will that last? But
is that a Ponzi scheme? Isn't that what it?
I don't know. I can look it up.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I always thought the Ponzi was on Happy Days. So
that's the Fonz.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't know if you were messing with me or not, man. Good grief.
I know it is.
But no, it's well. And did you hear the Brazilian president of Brazil? Oh, good gracious! Hang on, president of Brazil. Who is the president of the president of not Brazil? El Salvador.
Oh yeah, the new favorite.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's solid.
Nayib Bukele.
Yeah, he's solid.
Dude is solid. Yeah. Him and give me a. I've been reading a book on Calvin Coolidge.
Okay.
And it's hard to get through because it's early history type stuff, and I'm not super interested in all that. I want to get into the meat and potatoes, but just like a salad, you eat it even though you don't.
Right.
You don't really want it.
Page 20. You got it. I mean, keep going. Yeah.
Nayib Bukele and Javier Milei. Like if we could get.
They're out there.
They exist.
They exist. This guy's one of them, I believe. I mean, if he is,
oops, wrong one.
If he is who he says he is, if he is what he says,
yeah, he's proven to be so far. He's a genuine guy.
He is one. He's one that could turn it around. Yeah. My question is, now we're talking VP. I know that Trump is supposed to be meeting in Mar-a-Lago. I heard that he is meeting with Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, and she was a soldier.
I got it.
Yeah.
I like her. I think that she's a talented politician.
Yeah.
Amazing on the debate stage.
Yeah.
If you watched her in those debates.
She was great.
Dude.
She was great.
Coming off the top rope.
Yeah.
Like one after the other. So I thought she's tough. She can hang. She's fact-based. She's a big-time First Amendment person. Not as strong on the Second Amendment, which is troubling. And at the end of the day, she buys really heavily into the climate agenda.
Yeah, that is something that we have to address with. That is such a. More and more scientists are coming out now.
Yeah.
With the sham that this is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's. Yeah.
And you can thank social media. In a big regard, because the parroting, the talking points. I'm reminded of that video that Joe Rogan put together that he had on his show where it was the newscasters all parroting each other.
Oh yeah, that was a terrifying.
It's terrifying. Yeah. But we're all getting the same thing. They're all saying the same thing. It's an echo chamber about climate change. It's an echo chamber about the problems that we're having, right?
Yeah.
And the more the pushback is happening on that, the more the truth is coming out about that, about the stations where they're recording these temperatures and how, it's 7 to 10 degrees cooler on the farm than it is in the city. And most of these temperature recording devices are in the cities.
Right.
Where it's like, this isn't right. This is skewed. It's skewed. And then they have people come on, statisticians will come on, oh, well, it wouldn't make that big of a difference. And you got the scientists coming on going like, no, that makes actually a really big difference. Yeah. So all these things are coming out, and I'm hoping that something else needs to erupt to get us off the climate kick, because it's becoming debunked. It's no different in my mind. It's no different than the virus kick that we've been on, right? How that is all like, you've got Travis Kelce on trying to get people to go and get a jab.
Yeah. And that's the brilliance of it, is they'll get a Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and they'll have 20 celebrities lined up because these people are bought into the same thing, and they are bought and paid for by people who are helping politicians.
Absolutely.
And all that. It's the oh, what a tangled web we weave sort of thing.
Right.
And by the way, Patrick Moore, this is to skip back. Patrick Moore, the former head of Greenpeace, you need to listen to that guy.
Okay.
He's completely gone against the whole climate agenda.
Really?
His whole thing was improper corporate practices, if I remember correctly, but he's now outspoken against the climate agenda. He said, and this is definitely something we're talking about. This good thing we did this towards the end.
Yeah, because next week
they'll ban.
Yeah, we cannot talk about it because we won't be on.
That's right. We won't be able to talk about it.
But I mean, you think about
we'll get stand down in the corner with a megaphone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you think about that. Like, what's going to be next? As social media and the pushback begins to happen and the truth comes out through backdoor channels.
Yeah.
just like all the Southwest Virginians were right.
Yeah.
Right? We've been saying things that we've been right on. And nobody, it's like, oh, that's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That word is made up.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not a conspiracy. It's truth. It's truth-based. It's fact-based. And the more you push against what's coming out through the back door, that you're like, oh, that people are hearing, the louder that begins to resonate, and people like and share, and people, because I think in our society we're so fed up with the narratives that everybody's looking for the right answer. Mm-hmm. And
but you're looking in a sea of it takes more. But okay, we're more connected to information. We have more access to information than we ever have before. But we have a lot of access to bad information.
Yes.
And some of the bad information, like you're talking about, is pitched as good information. So
yes.
It comes from seemingly reputable sources. So we've turned it all upside down.
Yep.
And the people we used to go, let's just see what NBC says.
Oh, Tom Brokaw.
Yeah, let's listen to Tom Brokaw.
I believe Tom.
Yeah.
Right? And now I don't believe nobody gets their news from the news that I know anymore.
No.
Everybody's on their phone looking stuff up. Everybody's
most of the people I know that do, when I talk to them about like significant social issues, I think, what do you watch for your news?
Yeah.
And most of the time it's NBC.
Right.
Yeah, I watch the Today Show. I watch the NBC in the evenings.
Yep.
I watch CNN. It's the most trusted name in news.
Because for 60 years that's what I've done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
40 years, 30 years. Yeah. It's like,
or their parents did, because I know people my age that still do it.
Right. There was a time when that was the news, and we believed it.
Yeah.
And now it's like you can't trust it.
The only thing you can trust is braver than the rest.
That's exactly right. Which we need to wrap up. It's 10:02.
Oh man, there you go. Look at that.
Time's fun when you're having flies. So if we're still on here next week, if we're still allowed, I think we need to iron out that climate change thing.
Yeah.
Once and for all.
Yeah.
Davos. We can bring the Davos.
We've got to talk Davos, man.
Well, that's a lot of the Davos agenda, right? That whole thing. And so, fake meat. Just all of it. I watched a video of a rancher who was going off on the agenda of the government to buy up and report. They want to record. They want to chip their cattle, so they can record their carbon emission.
Oh, good gracious!
So that they can tax the rancher on the carbon emission. It's like, man, you put more carbon out, just like you said, you get greener trees, man.
I picked the wrong time to start the carnivore diet, I think.
Yeah.
I live in a suburban area. I'm gonna have to get some cattle in the backyard.
You have to have a few. I think you can't have cattle in town.
I think with a high enough fence and a handshake from my neighbor, maybe they'll be. I'll split this. I'll split this heifer with you 50-50.
Yeah, you can have the hind quarter. That's it.
I'll give you 10 ribeyes if you let me knock down that fence and put some cows back here.
Just a couple. We'll never say anything about it. And that's what it's coming to. Great. Anyway, till next week, we are braver than the rest. If you have any questions or comments, like and share us, please. But you can email us directly at thebraverthantheRest@gmail.com. Again, thebraverthantheRest@gmail.com. And hopefully next week we can get one of our founding fathers back on board with us.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to get Ben back in here for a couple sessions, and he is wide awake in America and doing well. He's got kids got the flu this week. They're going through a little bit of that in the house, but I just spoke with him a couple days ago, and he's doing well.
Drink lots of OJ.
Yeah.
Lots of water, vitamin C.
Tamiflu or whatever it's called.
Tamiflu?
Yeah, it's a Tamiflu. All right. Till then, braver than the rest, signing off. Keep your eyes up.